Did I say that right? Yeah? Dr. Onsini. Never ever said that. Alright. For those of you who may not know, Olu is a GP in the area. He's a trainer of collies. And like me, he was once a trainee who sat here. It's nice to have familiar faces back, and we do some 2-week referrals today, and then after coffee at 3:15 I'm doing some prescribing stuff. So these are real practical, important topics, so make it interactive, ask questions, ask him all the questions, not me, and yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarge, for the question. So, this is what I'm talking about today. How many of you guys have been in fostering in primary care? So anybody else fostering in GP surgery? Oh, okay, so not many then. So has anybody heard about the fast track cancer referral from anywhere before? So we have the general knowledge about it, isn't it? Okay, so that's what we're talking about today, basically. Just want to take a different spin on this and make it a bit interesting, so they can make use of it. So this are my objectives today. The hope is at the end of today, we know what exactly it is, the historical context, the present day format, how it works, very important. And then that bit there, how to use it, is the practical real life situation. And then we have the outcome data to explore, and then just go out and talk about anything else. That should be interesting also anyway. So what is it? So exactly what I put up there is a clinical diagnostics tool which in combination with a few other methods like screening, diagnostic tests, we are trying to find cancer earlier. So the whole idea is to use a tool that can prioritize symptoms based on their PPV, which is a positive predictive value. And then the aim of it is to harmonize what all GPs do, because we do different things. Most of us use instincts, but we want to make it one simple system. And the aim at the end, very important, is early diagnosis of cancer. We'll talk about why that's important very soon. So when it first came out initially, it was a 28-day time pathway, so that from diagnosis to treatment, the aim was to catch you from the beginning to the treatment in 28 days. So the initial phase of it, this part of it, is where we refer them using that tool, basically. And obviously, the rest of it, which is done in the hospital, we want to talk about today. Today is talking about the actual 2-week wait. So that's the thing, really. And that's a summary, by the way. So the full document is a good, God knows, 200 pages, which essentially details, what symptom groups to refer on. This summary is what I find most useful. It's the Cancer Research UK summary. And if you look carefully, what it does is it goes system by system, symptom by symptom. So for example, you can look at the symptoms, which if you find a patient that has them, then you can look under to see, look, do they have sort of symptoms, in which way we refer them on. So just to make it clearer, the whole idea is that when you see a patient that has the suspected cancer, you should be able to refer them to hospital and they'll be seen within 2 weeks. That's why it's called 2-week wait. So essentially, if you refer someone by that priority, they will be seen within 2 weeks. If you get it wrong, they will screen it and send it back to you that, look, this patient doesn't qualify. So they have to qualify based on the symptoms there. And then the whole idea is to see them within 2 weeks, and then hopefully by 28 days, they are diagnosed and start treatment already, which is the whole idea. So there's a full document, obviously, on NICE, and then we have this summary. So if you go through those, we can find a summary. This is what I find most useful. It's CRUK one. So that's what's next anyway. We'll come back to what exactly and how to use it when we go to the that section. So let's just get a bit of a historical context. Anybody knows what this is? Or where this is? That's a clue there. Richmond House. So this is the Department of Health in London. That's where it's housed anyway. And what they do is essentially take, the speech from the present day government or the Prime Minister. Well, we want to improve cancer rates, and then everybody starts rushing about and saying, look, let's try and find something. And that was the problem in 1999. cancer diagnosis, cancer outcomes horrible in the UK compared to Europe. Obviously, nobody likes that. We want to make it better. So we thought, well, what can we do? So the big guys that know how to do things, they essentially brought it up. Originally, 1999 was brought in to, especially for breast cancer. That's what it was. So essentially, breast cancer, of course, you get into screening, and then the symptoms will come in with them. So just said, look, include more symptoms, send them in quickly. Very later, included also colorectal cancer. Up to 2005, it was only those two, then everything else piled in 2005. And then, believe it or not, they probably wasn't even made aware of this until 2011. So it was in operation for 10 years before we informed everybody else. And of course, what happens then, everybody registered a GP, isn't it? So that's what happened there. So started 99, refined 2005, proper use 11, and the one we use now was changed in 15 to make it less sensitive. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Then more recently, there's a long-term NHS plan from 19 that says we want to diagnose 75% of cancers at an early stage. I think that's quite straightforward. Anyway, why you want to do that? But how does it work? It works by statistics. Does anybody like statistics here at all? I think that's quite easy. I can answer for everybody. Well, it was funny, during the lockdown, I got a bit interested in mathematics and statistics. And I've gone quite deep now. Too late to save me right now, to be honest. Even though I can't calculate figures for you, statistics are so important. You have to understand how they work to sort of be able to understand this tool and where we're going with this. My practice manager, Bonnie, back there, she knows everything. I come in and tell her about something new about statistics. Like, what are you talking about? She doesn't know what I'm talking about. That's right, you know. But we'll get there in it anyway. So what it does, it uses the positive predictive value of symptoms to essentially produce the document. So PPV, any idea how you can calculate the PPV of any condition? Say for example, I say rectal bleeding in bowel cancer. What would be the way for me to calculate how sensitive it is as a predictor of bowel cancer? Any ideas?
Fit test.
Sorry?
If you use fit test. Fit test.
Yeah, but what I mean is that, just imagine now that you want to calculate how sensitive the symptom bowel bleeding or period bleeding is in predicting the diagnosis of bowel cancer. How can you figure out how predictive it is? So for example, you have bowel cancer, someone diagnosed with bowel cancer, and you want to find out the symptoms and how predictive they are. No?
Someone must know who's done their AKT research.
Everyone who's revised it's in the AKT, aren't they now?
Oh, no, because they're sitting it today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those that have done the AKT.
They might know that, isn't it?
I've
That's what nobody
forgotten.
knows.
I've forgotten. Short-term memory. It's one of those things you dump in your short-term memory.
Anyway, what I'm going to say, so essentially it's quite simple, isn't it? So go to the very end, you have 100 people that have bowel cancer. We already know they have bowel cancer. You can review how they got there. So you look at the symptoms they presented with. If 90% with bowel cancer, then you have a 90% predictive value, isn't it? Because 90 out of 100 had that symptom. Do you see what I mean? Abdominal pain, maybe 2 of them had this, that's 2% predictive value. Do you see what I mean? So it's essentially just working your way back from the known cancers and trying to see which symptoms they had in common. And then that you can extrapolate that those symptoms must be common in cancer. So that's what they do essentially. So for example, PR bleeding has a 80% predictive value for bowel cancer. So you will have, most of the people will have that. Now, this is what statistics does, and this was very interesting. Now, what you can do is that pick any other symptom. Say abdominal pain, predictive value is maybe 2%. Change the bowel habits, value is 53. Now, you can create a tool where if you, for example, want to catch people that have cancer, it's fine enough to go by period bleeding, you catch most of them. But by reducing the sensitivity of your tool, you can bring in more people to come into that group. So you can say, for example, apart from that, I'll include abdominal pain. It's only got 2% predictive value, but when you combine them, the value, sort of the combined value goes up. And what you're doing essentially is, again, like I said, understanding this is very important. I don't know the formulas, but what you're doing is by making it less sensitive, you are bringing in more false negatives. Because positive predictive value is the number of true positives, but then you can bring in more false negatives. Because one of those false negatives will be bowel cancer. So essentially, it's less sensitive, but then you have more reach. So by adjusting that number, you can look at the cumulative PPV that will then mean you refer more patients with less specific symptoms, and hopefully then you catch more with cancer. And that's what they did. In 15, before 15, it was a 5% combined predictive value that was set for all the cancers, but in 2015 was reduced to 30% just to make sure we catch more people. So that obviously you have more referrals by then. And I don't like numbers too much, but just follow me through this very carefully. So let's take, for example, if you look at the key here, so if you see that sign there, it's the beginning when we introduced your program, if you remember, from 0 to 11. And then that one is after the public awareness, if you remember, it started at 11. And then this is after the PPV was reduced to 3%. So if we take, for example, look down here, what this is saying is that this chap did a study. He studied how many patients was referred under this particular guideline in 15 as compared to 17. And so the numbers obviously have gone up by then from 702 to 1251. And it represented a 78% increase in number of patients referred, which would happen if you have, say for example, everybody that has a payout bleeding, you refer them, and it's 15K. So we're not only bleeding, also including ones that have abdominal pain. Most of them don't have it, but then you're going to catch a lot of false negatives. You see what I mean? Which actually have it. So, and then you reduce sensitivity of the test. So then you go from PPV of 8.5 to 3.5. You see what I mean? So the importance of this slide and this tool is that the tool, you can fine tune it. That's what I'm trying to say. So by selecting your symptoms, you can fine tune this tool so that it gets more people or less people. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why it always changes every year. They include more symptoms or less symptoms. So for example, breast cancer, so basically a lot of them, you include headache with breast cancer in the right age group. You see what I mean? Yeah. And this is very interesting on this one actually, because it shows exactly how the numbers have gone up over the years as we're introducing, making it less sensitive. At the beginning it was 10% PPV as a collection. So if we go back again, I think it's very important to get this bit, yeah? If you go back to the bowel cancer, so we know 70% of them or 90% of them will have payout bleeding. So that's on its own. If you had abdominal pain, the combined PPV goes down from 90%. Abdominal pain is only 1%. So by that, you're missing the middle somewhere. So then you can refer more people. So let's move on anyway. I think let's get going now. So the present format, the latest one is published in the NICE guideline, which amended a little bit in December last year, but still very, very similar to the previous one. The tool is cancer site specific and symptom specific, like I've shown you just now. And then also included some investigation findings. So for example, the whole idea of iron deficiency anemia, whereas before you just pass through it, now in the male, everybody refers them on. So that's now increased the number they're going to get in there. It's very relevant. It's aligned with the 2009 long-term plan for cancer diagnosis. This particular one is about increasing the diagnosis of cancers in first and second stages 75%. It's about 50% right now. I want to get to 75% because if you diagnose it early, you can get it better earlier. And obviously, it's included in the PCN directives that we use now as part of the Impact and Investment Fund. Essentially, we have to pay more attention to the referral. So this is just a representation of what I was saying earlier on. So at the moment we diagnose most cancers, or 50% of cancers at stage 1 or 2, which has better outcomes. We're trying to get 75%. And what's the evidence behind this? How do we know if you diagnose cancers early, you get better outcomes? Well, we have the evidence now. We'll come back to this. It's in there somewhere. I'll show you in a minute. So before we go to that, let's talk about how you actually use it in real life. So the page I just showed you now, don't forget out again. Just try and get back there. Sorry, this one there actually. So this is what you normally have. And you think, how do I exactly remember all of this? I mean, it's a lot to remember, isn't it? Think about it. And I mean, nobody can remember all that. You see what I mean? But the key here is that what we call red flag signs, they are still very, very important. So instead of thinking I should remember everything there, work with your red flag signs. Anything that's bleeding or has got blood in it or anemic, something is going on here. You look at a patient that's got a blood come from somewhere, anywhere, that's red flag. So now you're going there to check bleeding and see whether they qualify for any. And obviously that's based on age as well. So with the when we go back to that, when we go back to this one, as you can see, for example, that bleeding, you have particular, then you have what's it called? This is the age added into it. So the weight loss. So if someone is bleeding PR and they're over 50, you refer them. So there's a lot of combinations that goes in there to qualify for the 2-week weight referral. So you are essentially, either you know, a lot of you know it offhand by now. If you've been doing it for 5-6 years, you know what's red flag signs and what qualifies. But if you're not sure, once you pick up the red flag signs, go back to that format and use it just to go through and see whether they qualify. The same as anything losing weight is not fine, is the early age. Lumps or masses are good, skin changes, pigment or injury and pain. So you can then refer back to it. But with time, as you use it more and more, you kind of figure out what the referral criteria are. Obviously, we're all time challenged, and it's always a problem of saying, well, maybe she didn't say that I didn't hear properly, so it doesn't happen. When you're referring, it's very simple. It's a mathematical thing. If you have the combination of symptoms, that's all you need. Anybody that's got bowel habits change more than 6 weeks, who's over, what is it now? Over 50, is it? Over 50 is going to be sane. So if you're referring, don't need to tell them about abdominal pain. Just say, I've got a 50-year-old patient with bleeding PR or between about 6 weeks. Can you kind of refer, say 1 or 2 weeks, and they will say, you don't need to write a long story, just a quick, short, and to the point. So don't worry too much about writing a long story. Then, in addition to that, you have to remember also there's a lot of things that we put out there now which should help to improve diagnosis, which is things to get more familiar with when you get primary care. We have a very important holistic approach. Somebody that's 95 years old with possible bowel cancer, you shouldn't just refer them without asking them, what's they actually want. What's the point diagnosing bowel cancer at 95? You can treat it. So you have to look at the other factors of what you're doing, really, whether it makes any sense. You have to remember also other tools we have now. We have the rapid access GP brain MRI scan. This was introduced a few years ago. You can refer patients with brain cancer directly for MRI scan, which can be a lot quicker sometimes than 2-week wait. You can use the FITS testing, which you mentioned earlier on, which is it's probably even more sensitive than 2-week for diagnosing cancer. It's getting to be very, very frontline now. And this is available in the surgery right away. Just tell them to reception and pick up the kits, and they can do that. Community endoscopy, easily available right now. In particular in bowel cancer for younger people, especially females. We see the incidence is going higher now. So sometimes instead of referring them, you can send them very quickly for a 2-week wait, for a quick endoscopy, which is supposed to be familiar with the waiting times. These are alternatives basically to use in conjunction really. And then also you can use urgent hospital investigations. Somebody that you think might have cancer in the lungs, you can send them for the same day chest X-ray. You can get it back the next day. You can use that instant PSA test. A lot of things you can use. So that's something to keep in mind. So just to summarize again how we got here, this is the tool. I really can't. It's a matter of using it more often. Then you get used to how it works. But essentially, you have groups of symptoms, and the bits where it shows the grain, those ones you can refer them, but you can do like 2-week wait and they'll accept them. So, yeah. So that's how you use it in real life. So, this is what everybody wants to know all the time. Outcome data, very important, apparently. I mean, it's a costly thing after all. We pay a lot of money to do these things. So the question is, does it work? That's what outcome data does. does it actually work? Now, I've picked a few to discuss this under. So we can look at early diagnosis of cancer. That's the outcome data, isn't it? If you diagnose more, it's a good chance we're picking them up from the surgery before they get to the hospital in A&E. Survival rates, then these three in particular under, they are specific to primary care. And it's more of a performance data in terms of how we're using it. So I'll discuss them a little bit more in a few minutes. So now, we need to be very careful. Data is very, it can be as helpful as dangerous as it can be. We all know that if your misinformation can be more powerful than information. So we have to be very careful with information and data, because when you're looking at the data, you've got to consider everything else that's going on. All right. So if I say people are surviving cancer more, is it because we have better screening? You can use the tracker genes now to find people that have breast cancer. That's a screening program. Maybe that's why it's improving. We have all these centers I talked about. You can refer to MRI's cancer brain. That could be why. It may not be 2 week wait. We have FIT test, a good one. Cancer specific bedside test. That's getting more and more popular now because. Of course, we're getting advancements in biomechanics and biogenomics, which means we have tested a lot of things now bedside. That's going to get very big very soon. Not as big or as much yet. All the surveillance programs, well, that feeds in directly into it, but not only into the 2 week wait, it feeds into everything else as well. And obviously, remember, we're treating cancer better now in the hospitals. So this data, really, don't be careful when we interpret them. So the three under, this one shouldn't be affected too much, but the two on top, they might be corrupted, essentially. So the whole focus is on early diagnosis. So what's early diagnosis of cancer? Somebody defined it, and that's what it said, basically. Identification of characteristics of cancer, basically pick it up very early, and the points that you want to be able to put an intervention in place that will work better. The earlier you pick it up, the better, and that's a direct relationship. There's no argument about that, in most cases anyway. So this is one such data. So we're looking at the first one we picked up on. We said the early diagnosis of cancer could be important. Now, if you look at this, I mean, you guys can surely pick out what's happening here. Any observations here? From anybody? If we're asked to look at that data, so what do you think?
It's increased and then plateaued.
Yeah, very good point. It's increased and then plateaued. Very, very good point. So it's increased. I mean, obviously we need more specific data, so, but this essentially will correspond to, as you can see there, 2013-14. Now, we all know what happened here. There's another, this is the next one actually. The 2 week wait was introduced obviously in 1999. This is 2011. This is where they started. When they tell you on the news, you can go to your GP and if you have the symptoms. And that was what actually blew it up, because before people were in COVID, they didn't know about it. So obviously you can see that's when they started really. And 15, what happened in 15 or thereabouts? You know what I just said now? We changed the PPV from 5 to 3%, so we could make it broader, isn't it? And you know, you could argue that that's why it's gone up. Again, like I said, you know, this you can't say for sure. You know, screening programs got better as well, and this is not specific for 2 week waits. You see what I mean? So it's a good sign, but that's okay, isn't it? It's encouraging. All right, so we are picking up the cancers earlier. That's a possibility. Survival rates, yeah, they look like they're going up as well from 2000, quite constant, 1 and 5 year. Remember again, this data doesn't say it's 2 week wait. Everything else that we saw before is affecting it, so you can't really say for fact. This is quite interesting. This came out only last year actually. So the ONS is amazing. I like the ONS because they have numbers for it. They're collecting data constantly. America in the country, America have this and that. And this is what they've done. They've been able to actually prove it now that if you diagnose cancer earlier, you have better outcomes. You might assume so, but then if you don't have any evidence, you can't tell. But if you look at what's happening here, even, let's look at, for example, breast cancer. 1 year survival rate of breast cancer, and mind you, these patients were followed from 13 to 17, so they followed them for 5 years basically. So the all-time 1 year survival rate for cancer is 95.8%. So if you pick it up at stage 1, you have one or two, all combined survival rate, it's 95.8. If you pick it up at stage 1, you have a 100% survival rate in 1 year survival. Everybody that's picked up at stage 1 of cancer, in those years they all survived for 1 year. And at stage 2 drops to 98.9, stage 3, 95.5, stage 4 is relative to size, obviously, when its survival rate drops. And that value holds even at the 5-year point. So at 5 years, all stages have 5% survival rate. And then again, at stage 1, these same people here, they dropped to 97.9% over 5 years. So that's evidence that you can see the same thing there also. Evidence that diagnosing cancer early does improve survival rates. Now, if you look down this number, it's quite interesting. Colorectal shows the same picture. You have a 97 dropping down to 43. That's horrible, in fact. You want to pick those up in stage 1 and 2. And that's the whole focus about what we're doing. You try to pick up the cancers very early. As you can see, that's what you want. You want those big numbers before they start falling. But look at Hodgkin's lymphoma, interestingly. Hodgkin's lymphoma is stage 1, 1 year survival rate, and 6.9. It doesn't drop very much, does it? It's kind of stays the same-ish. It's not a massive drop there, you can see. Another one that might be interesting, prostate cancer, very interesting. You have a stage 1 survival of 100%, you have stage 2, 100, stage 3, 100, stage 4, 88. So basically some cancers, picking them up early is more important than others. And if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of this, then obviously you can find out which cancers in particular you shouldn't miss OLS has the statistics for all the cancers, by the way, male, female, all together, 1 year, 5 years. It's amazing, it's full of numbers. Basically, and they're very important things, basically. So this is my evidence to say that, look, if we're picking up cancer in stage 1 or 2, we should be surviving them better. And so that shows, going to the next one that we said before, survival rates are increasing in those same years, basically. Now these three are very different. These three outcome data measurements, they are essentially trying to see what we're doing in the surgery. Okay, so where's Bubbly? Is Bubbly here? Yeah, so that's Dr. Bubbly. She was my first trainee ever. Got lucky to have her as my first trainee. Didn't know what I was doing at all. I still know what I'm doing. But we did a little audit, which you did actually. I'm going to show some of the slides here. So this is the key here. One of the objectives of this whole thing, as you said, is to harmonize how GPs work. Because you have all the interesting articles. There's a few in BMJ. I can give you a if you want about how GPs work, how we work when we diagnose patients. It's called iterative diagnosis. I don't know if you've heard about iterative diagnosis, which is just when the patient comes in, you see them right away, you know their age, you know their sex, the way they're walking, you're already 80% at your diagnosis. Believe it or not, 80%. Just by seeing what they are. Now, when they sit down, they start telling you stuff. You're just knocking out the ones that don't fit in. You're trying to ram them into that same place. And that's how GPs work. So we kind of work our way down by the big, and then we kind of wait and see very final answer. Now, if you keep doing that, it's danger that you might miss some less intuitive things. So to avoid that sort of errors, that's what we plot it in. So we can measure how we're working by using this. So let's start from the crude referral rate. This essentially is the overall number of referrals we're using the pathway. So you can pick a whole year, look at your surgery, how many people will refer, crude numbers, adjusted for patient size, and you can have a number that you can actually go to the Cancer Data UK, which has been documenting this number from the beginning of time. So you can see the national crude rate of referral. You can go down to your CCG actually and see what everybody's doing. So if you're referring 20, everybody's trying 25. Something is wrong there, isn't it, really? The second one is the conversion rate, which is the number of people that you refer results in a diagnosis of cancer. So when Bubbly, Dr. Bubbly did this, for example, what she did was go through the system one, find all the patients diagnosed with cancer in a particular 12-month period, and then now took that data and then intersected, what's it called again? You joined it to reports on how many patients have got 2-week weight recorded on their system. So when you do that, you can see how many patients you refer that were then diagnosed with cancer. So essentially what it's telling you is how many of the patients that you referred eventually had cancer, basically, which is a sensitivity thing, really.
Just out of interest, do you remember what the rates were?
Yeah, I'll show you the actual pictures. Yeah. So you see, this number, does it sound familiar to you at all? If we're talking about the conversion rates, what should that really line up with? It should line up with the PPV we set earlier on, isn't it? 5-3%. So what I mean? So because that's what is built into the system. You're meant to get so many wrong that your accuracy is about 3%, isn't it? So you shouldn't be flying too far above that. You should be referring more people so I can decrease this number. Yeah. I don't think anybody likes numbers, but I'll bring it to life very soon, don't worry. Set round 2 of this, we'll do some exercise to make it more interesting for you guys, sorry. I'll show you that in a bit. And then detection rate is the percentage of the confirmed cancers receiving first treatment for cancer following 2 weeks referral. So this is the percentage of your referrals that turn out to be cancer. This is the percentage of all the cancers that were diagnosed in your surgery that you didn't pick up or that you picked up. So so for example, let me show you real numbers now. So this is Dr. Mami's over results. So essentially, we did this just to see what's happening in 2020 with the lockdown. We weren't seeing patients anymore now. You have to do them on the phone. How does that affect your cancer referral rates? That's very important, isn't it? So we're able to track our, for example, this is the total number referred over the years, 17, 19, 18, and then carrying on. The new cancers that were picked up was that. So from those two, you can obviously pick up your conversion rate, yeah, which is at the bottom there. Then the detection rate, obviously, this is the percentage of how many cancers you had combined with how many you referred. So, and the whole idea is if you referred the rather than picked up in A&E, it's more likely to be early cancer, isn't it? That's the whole idea. Because if you get picked up in A&E, now you've already got stage 4, isn't it? So those numbers can be compared. And we have national numbers for this, which you can compare to your CCG. Now, don't forget, these numbers can vary very widely between area and area. If you live in a very affluent area, some of the numbers will change. But some things like conversion rates, which is a rate, shouldn't change really. You see what I mean? So this was all happened to us. I'll show you that in the graph. Now, if you look at this, what Dr. Gomez was able to do was to show that in 2020-21, when we had the lockdown, there was a very, very obvious dip in our diagnosis of cancers. That was 40 compared to other years. Now, that's clearly because not only us was affected, also the hospital was affected, the way they were diagnosing cancer, everybody was missing data. So we had a lot of catching up to do. And then if you look at sorry, what was the first one again? Yeah, this is the overall cancer. So this is the referral rate, the crude numbers went down again in 2020. Again, if you get to the point where numbers speak to you, you can look at these numbers and look at what happened those years. Why did we refer so many those years? What happened this year? Now, you can look at it in many ways. I mean, I can't tell you what happened here. I know the story. We went from having 5 partners down to very little number of partners. We had a lot more allied people working with us on PCN. We had advanced practitioners. Now, people will refer people more when they have less knowledge. So that can be the reason why the referral rates went up suddenly at that point in time. You can tell a story from what you're looking at there if you understand numbers that way. And then if we then look at yeah, so that's basically just an example of how I can use it. I'll put it as a reference. There's a very that's a website I can go and compare national rates, change data, look at the I can probably get it up here. Let me see, how are we doing for time? Are we good for time?
Yeah, we've got 35 minutes before tea.
That should be there. So sorry, let me just try and find some more for you. That's it. So there we go. Let's go to cancer data. So this is a very brilliant website. I mean, there's so much going on. And I'll tell you why this is all important very soon. So that's the fun bit at the end, where I'm going to enjoy myself anyway. So let's look at, for example, we look at all cancers, national, England, and And then let's see. So we can look at those numbers now. You got the table, obviously, the actual numbers. So all over the country, you can see that at all cancers, national level, we had the numbers referred. This is the crude referral rates. If you go down, that's conversion rates. Those numbers 7%. So that's where we all fall into. Even though we set the rates to about 3%, people are still not referring as many. So as you can see, it's tallied very nicely with what we are doing at the surgery, about 7%, which was the global was able to find out. You look at the detection rate, it's about 50% or so. We went well below that in my surgery. That's what you use data for. So you have to find out why are we referring or converting less, and then you can now work on, Bonnie is there. We have now, that's a picture that I showed you just now, is on every consulting room on the wall, so that everybody can have a good look at that. Was direct response to the audits that probably did. We have to do something about it before we audit next year again. So you can do even more than that, actually. You can look at, instead of national, go for CCG. So you can go for, well, let's look for my own CCG, which is Castle Point and Rochford, eh? So here we go. So we can look at that, and that's a much more local assessment. You can check to see whether what you're doing is right or whether it's just a regional difference. And this, again, you can narrow it all down. I think that's the worst. We can't go down any less than that, basically. So it's a brilliant website, and if you do that kind of audit, you can compare it to this one as your standard, as you know. So let's go back. Where's that there? There we go. All right. So those are the outcome data we discussed. Now, I think you probably expect me to come in and say, well, it works or it doesn't work. But again, like I said, this number is very complicated. We need more data to understand exactly what's going on. This is just a little thing to show you what's happening in the hospital. Because at the end of the day, you refer a patient, and they've been seen within 2 weeks. We don't even know. They don't get seen in the hospital. What happens then? They say, oh, wasted, isn't it? The 2015 iteration of the 2-week referral, they had to ask what stakeholders think. So they ask everybody, the gastro team, the neuro team, that what do you guys think? And most of the hospital specialties said, well, we don't like it, we don't think it's going to work. Because obviously what you're doing is diverting more patients to them, they have to do more work now. And they have to have a belief in it anyway. So they'll be saying no, but this is why you have to say no, because I started at the beginning of the 28-day thing where you refer them in 2 weeks that they should be having treatment within 28 days. Well, it's not really happening, is it? This is standardly set, and as you can see, we're falling below it constantly for a 2-week wait. But that was seeing people within 2 weeks. It's not really happening as much as it should. People only get it through within 1 day. So the success of the system depends on everybody doing the right thing. This is just all that bunch of numbers. I have to fashion this out just to prove that we're improving against the euro, which was the whole idea of the system itself. So we have a green line, not very clear, but I think there's a little bit of a sign there that the survival rate, or rather the mortality, is falling a bit sharper in the UK as compared to some areas in Europe anyway. You want that going down. More in males, less in female. And the beauty of numbers is you can find out why in female is it breast cancer, is it cervical cancer, then we can target that a bit more. So, yes, this is where the fun begins. Any questions before we move on at all? Any specific questions? Yeah.
I don't think I understood what the conversion rate was. So I got the detection rate, but what's the value of the conversion rate?
So the conversion rate is, it means that say you refer 100 people to the hospital, under the 2-week wait, how many of them turn out having cancer? That's what it means really. So out of 100, if 7 have cancer, then your conversion rate is 7. You're converting 2-week referrals to cancer.
And then the detection rate is?
Detection rate is the total number of cancers diagnosed in your surgery in that year. How many of them were picked up to the 2-week wait? Because the total cancer diagnosed in your surgery is a combination of the ones you referred and the ones that were picked up by screening, by appearing in A&E, by going for radiology and they find out something else.
Right, okay.
So essentially, how many of the ones that you'd be, and all those other ones, you have to presume they're diagnosed late, except for the screening ones.
Right.
So do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's a bit confusing. So are we happy with that now, yeah? All right, so this is the point where we're going to do a little bit of experimentation. The whole idea of me going, I could have come here and give you a full lecture about two equate and everything, but I think sometimes we take for granted what we have now. Statistics is a very powerful tool. Statistics is a story of life. In my journeys through quantum physics, I've gone quite deep now. I think it's too late to pull me back, like I said. We're finding out actually probability and statistics is the beginning of, is the origin of life. Everything that how we got here is based on probability. It's a very strong tool. You can detect the future, you can tell the future if you know statistics and use it very well. So we're going to run a little experiment here. And Bonnie, I'm going to do a little bit of hand counting here. So we're going to do a little bit here of escape. So now, before we do that, so let's just show you that right away. So I've got a little video here, and after you watch this, please can we just do a hands up to tell what you think. So this man is proposing the problem for you, and there we go.
Steve is very shy and withdrawn.
Actually, so sorry, before that, this, just put some context into it. So I'm in the northwest or middle east of America, somewhere in America, maybe Nebraska or something, and I walk into a bar, and I see Steve. Now, remember, I don't know anything about Steve at all, just seen him, but somebody provided you with this information. Yeah, there we go.
Steve is very shy and withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with very little interest in people or the world of reality. A meek and tidy soul, he has a need for order and structure and a passion for detail. Which of the following do you find more likely? Steve is a librarian, or Steve is a farmer?
So, should I play one more time? Are you fine with that? So you're walking to a bar in somewhere in Nebraska or something, and then you see a man called Steve. Somebody tells you, "Name is Steve," and you observe him, he's doing all those things. Exactly. So, who thinks Steve? I've got to put numbers down there. So, Bonnie, you're going to count for me if you don't mind. So let's do something here, very, very quickly. So we have librarian or farmer. So look at that again. So anybody want to pony up? If you think it might be a librarian, can you put your hands up for me if you think it's a librarian? So can you count for us, Bonnie?
I'm going to say farmer, but
So just think simply, just before you.
For about 18.
18, very good. And then how many people think it might be a farmer based on what we know now?
4.
So that's it. 4, yeah, excellent.
To be honest, both of those sound like they fit the bill for order, structure, and detail.
Well, that's very interesting what you just said. Now, very interesting. I'll tell you why in a minute, okay? So, look, this actually, what you've just done now, guys, it's won somebody a Nobel Prize, okay? So we had these two very interesting guys. They were Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They were actually psychologists, and they won a Nobel Prize in 2002, I think, for economics. They won a prize for economics, you know. And what they did was use statistics to actually try and examine how we think, you know, because like I said, the deeper we go into particle physics, the more we are realizing that actually mathematics is quite powerful, guys. Mathematics actually describes what we think. Mathematics can model thoughts based on mathematics, and statistics is the tool you do that with. And the whole idea is that you use something called Bayesian theory. Now, it depends on existing knowledge. So if you know something, you can essentially, with the power of statistics, extrapolate and know more and more and more and more until you get to the answer. And this has been used quite in a lot of applications. And the rest of this lecture was just talking about what you can do with statistics and why we should actually embrace this thing that's coming towards us, because it's going to get even more relevant. So before we get there, let's look at the answer again. So guys, we've come up with an answer here, which suggests that, where's that pen? Here. Which means we have, what's the percentage, somebody work it out for me please, of librarian, the answers I mean. So 18 out of 22 is what?
82. 82%.
82%, very good. And this is corresponding 18%. So from this this room now, we've kind of figured out that this guy might be a librarian based on what we know what he's like, isn't it? Right? He's got fingers. This gentleman here thinks that will apply to both, which is very interesting in it. So now we've got the answer, right? Now, can we improve on this answer a little bit? And what do we need to do that? If we're going to improve on that answer, what do we need? Some more what? Data maybe? Some more information, exactly. Now, that data, I can bet you that you have that data. So I'm going to find that data from you guys as well, all right? So now, another question entirely. Say for example, you have one librarian in Nebraska. How many farmers do you think will be? So let's say more than 5, more than 10, more than 20. Just give me a number of librarians farmers in Nebraska. Any idea? I mean, I've not been to Nebraska. Not probably most of you haven't been there, but then what do you think?
More farmers.
More
So
farmers.
5 times more, 10 times more,
Probably 10 or more.
10 or more. Yeah, that's a good one. Can we work even more with that? Is that what happened with 10 or 20 maybe? 20, yeah? So possibly 10. We're going to happen 2 here, and then maybe 20 more. So for every farmer, we have 10 or 20. Now, let's say for example then, that in Nebraska, we have 100. Actually, let's use 10. 10 librarians. That means we'll have between 100, yeah, and 200. So what we're doing here is Bayesian. This is the simplest way to explain Bayesian statistics, which means that we have a prior knowledge of how a farmer should look. And now, just from your head, you're fishing out these numbers, which is quite interesting because the actual number is actually 60 librarians, pharmacy librarians. But then that's fair enough. This will do the job. Now, this is even more interesting now. So if we have 10 librarians in Nebraska, how many of them do you think will fit that bill? I mean, they won't all be neat and tidy, you know. So I'm just give me a number. If you have 10, how many of them do you think will fit that bill? 8 of them, yeah. So that's 80%. Everybody agree with that? Yeah. Pretty good. So now we'll have 8 farmers, or librarians, yeah, that could be in that bar, possibly. How many? What about farmers? How many of them, percentage-wise, do you think will fit that bill? It's probably less, isn't it, surely, guys? How much less? 10%. Yeah, very good. So what we're saying is that if we choose a lower number, we have 10. If we choose a higher number, we have 20. So let's say we work from this and this. So we want to try again. If you go into a bar in Nebraska and you see a man there that fills that prescription, what are the chances that he's a farmer or a librarian? You've answered the question again. Yeah, well, it could be both. I mean, individual, but we do it over at the very beginning. So basically, you've gone from this answer to this answer, which is basically proving that actually it's more likely to be a farmer, isn't it? You see what I mean? Yeah. Because your brain didn't put in this side. Our brain is not very good at thinking about prevalence. Just think about exactly what this person looks like. Now, this is exactly what's happening now. Everywhere. And in fact, this whole tool, this whole thing, that's what's been applied. This PPV that I see all the time, this is what's been applied. Before the turn of the 19th century, in the late 18th century, if you want to go and apply for life insurance, they don't ask you about you having diseases. They just say, what's your age? They'll mark you down. They don't apply other things into it. And the gentleman that found this, I actually found it in the 17th century. Thomas Bay, he was a mathematician in the 17th century. And he likes gambling a little bit. And what he does is he will ask somebody to just keep throwing dice and pick them. So he's got data from just a few dice. And then he wrote a theory which says that you can improve your knowledge if you have a fair idea of prevalence. And he died in 1760. He didn't publish his work. He was only found out 10 years after he died that this is actually important stuff. And what I'm telling you is that if you have a little bit of knowledge, you can keep improving it and improving it and improving it and then get it down. As humans, we're not very good at doing that, but statistics can tell us exactly what the answer should be. And that's why all these things we're looking at here, they're very important. They're taking out human error from the situation. And if you don't believe me, what is this? Please, somebody know this thing. I've not had any point for this. What's this thing? Who's that? What's the collider? Excellent, brilliant. So it's the Large Hadron Collider, or I could call it a Large Hadron Collider. This is the most biggest man-made object in the world, essentially. It's a 27 kilometers of a vacuum ring. So essentially, in this thing is vacuum, and then what is for the particle collider? Particle collider is for knowing what atoms are made of. So we got as far as looking at cells under the microscope, because at the atom level we know what it is now. And then we go to the protons and neutrons, what makes them up? I mean, they can't just be protons, but they are made up of stuff, isn't it? So what you want to do if you want to know what's made up of, there's two ways. You put it together, you can't do that to know what's made up of, or you smash it. So when you smash it, you can actually see what comes out. So that's what they do. They take protons, which is essentially just a hydrogen nucleus. Hydrogen is H1, isn't it? So you strip all the electrons off, done easily. You collect them in a cluster, and then protons are positively charged. You then put magnets all around this thing. This is 20-some kilometers long. It travels to countries, travels Switzerland and France, 100 meters underground. And what you're doing is that you are putting these protons in massive high speed. It's very, very near the speed of light. And then you have one beam coming this way, one beam coming this way, and then in these detectors, that's a detector. You then smash them up together, and then you get this coming out. This is a cluster of tracks. So when you smash protons up, you have a lot of things coming out. Light, you have electrons, you have all sorts of things going on. If you know thermodynamics very well, that's what they do. And essentially, what they then do is they do this over and over and over and over again. And every time you do it again, they start to use that same statistics to figure out what left this track, and in time, they will find out now, the computer, the standard model, which actually shows all the, we've got the things that make protons up. We don't want to go too deep into that, but we know what they are. And then that was the biggest one, 2012. They discovered the Higgs boson, which is essentially it gives matter weight. These are very, very important things, because these guys are, the formulas they come up with this thing, they are so accurate. And what they've used here is simple Bayesian statistics. Applied over and over again. So you smash this up over and over again, take all these tracks, and they keep studying them and putting them on a graph. And this is indisputable. This is obviously then very important to moving forward. Any idea what this is, guys? Come on. Oh, who's that? Yeah, Gary Kasparov. Who's Gary Kasparov? Yeah, but it's a double grandmaster, the only one in the world, isn't it? So what would that be then? Because you shouldn't watch the computer when you're playing chess. It's called the Deep Blue, isn't it? This happened like God knows millions of years ago. So that's the Deep Blue, was the strongest, most powerful computer back in the day. And Deep Blue eventually defeated Gary Kasparov, as we all know, isn't it? And the way they taught this computer how to play chess is by playing chess with the computer over and over and over again. It makes mistakes, but then it remembers last mistakes and apply this same principle we've done here to essentially narrow down the possibilities until it gets to the point where it can beat the best person in the world. And that's what this is, by the way. It's called the Deep Blue, the computer. You've seen this before many times, haven't you guys?
Yeah.
It's happened to everybody before, isn't it? Now, if I told you that your phone knows what you want more than you do, would you argue? Because if I ask your phone that question, we'll get it right. So sometimes because you are scrolling through something, you don't know you want it yet, but your computer's already used Bayesian statistics to find out, and the chances that nothing was there on your phone before you actually looked at it. And that's how good these things are. What's the connection between Facebook and Donald Trump? He resides in London, the connection. Cambridge Analytica. Have you heard about Cambridge Analytica?
Yeah.
Yeah? So Cambridge Analytica is a very, very small IT company in London that what they did was gather all the information from Facebook to then profile people who might be Trump supporters. So essentially by what you're doing on the phone all the time, they can tell you might be, and using the same statistics, they can then filter adverts to you. That's how Trump won in 2016. So this is how powerful these tools are. At the moment we're at the very, very what do I do? No.
Just go to snooze.
So see, all these things they depend on data. Imagine your phone, how much time you spend on it. So that's the data going in there all the time, and that data is what we're extrapolating things for. When it comes to the medical field, our data has been limited. Well, at the beginning though, I work in GP surgery. Barbers know how intense I am about our research because there's so much data we have. We have a lot of data on our systems. And it's just finding the connections and working things out. Now, this is the grandmaster of all them. Can somebody please tell me what this is? Please. That might be the key there. It actually says there, isn't it? So that's the complex human genome. So in January this year, finally it's been done. Okay, we've I think it's happened already anyway, 6, 7, 10 years ago. We've already cloned a whole complete human genome, but from different bits and pieces everywhere. And in January this year, we finally cloned one single person. All right. That's how many volumes of the human genome there are. There's 262,000 pages in this. So if you take all your A's and G's, which you have in every segment, and stretch them out, that's how many volumes will contain. And what is this? This is data, isn't it? This is data. Now, what's interesting about this is that if I was to ask you to guess how many pages of that 262,000 is unique to each individual, how many do you reckon? Well, we share a lot of genetic material, don't we? Over 1,000, less than 1,000?
Less.
I'm gonna have to clap.
More?
Huh? More than 1,000, yeah? Anyone guess, anyone take us? Can't get it wrong, come on guys. 500, spot on. It's 500 exactly, that's only 500 pages are unique to each person. So think about it very carefully. Maybe one day, when we can cheaply do this, it's very expensive now. Obviously we know now that we can easily, it's getting cheaper every day with you have this tool used now to cut genes and all that thing. So one day we might be able to put a baby into a machine that will tell us the exact unique genome they have. And using that statistic just to discuss now, you can essentially, before the baby is born, tell exactly what disease they're going to have, what stages should be tested, and you know, you might find out they don't even need us at all, because you know, you can use statistics to predict what's going to happen in the future. So we've come a long way from what we were talking about in the beginning, but then I think we should be, when I was doing my AKT CSA, I had only eyes for that. But then as you get on with your career, you have more, you understand it more. You should try and understand why things happen, from the reason why this two-equator thing came about and where it will take you to. And this is pretty much where I'm going to end it now. Just to have that in mind that you know, it's a small beginnings, but this is where we're heading, guys. And that's it, really. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I've got the references. I'll send the stuff you can have that. So there's a few references that I use there, which you might find useful. But that's it pretty much. If you have any questions for me. I think I've finished one in 10 minutes. Yeah, that's it. Like a long break.
Takes the opportunity to ask questions. You don't often hear this.
We go back to the beginning actually. Maybe that's one question for you that way. So that we can look at anything that we want to. But this is the main thing. That's the actual document. Right. No questions from anybody?
I was like, no, you're not.
Alright, thank you very much, guys.
No, I'll save it as a